right, next up we have our union comments. I believe I saw Mr. Mock here from GTA. Hi, Eric, welcome. Hi. Eric, can you swing to this one for me? Thanks. Sure.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Mock. I am a GT rep at Athena High School, and I work with our leadership on a number of initiatives. NYSET held a Rochester Disconnected event last week, highlighting the growing need to address technology's impact on student learning, particularly cell phones. Our GTA leadership organized a panel of district leaders to share Greece's cell phone policy implementation process. This event offered a valuable platform for sharing best practices. Greece Central School District, thanks to the collaborative efforts of the district and the Greece Teachers Association, provided a compelling example of how thoughtful, community-driven solutions can address technology's challenges. The Disconnected event showcased the positive impact of district-union collaboration in creating positive change, and Greece's work is a testament to that success. It demonstrated how, through planning and partnership, we can create learning environments where students truly connect with their education, teachers, and with each other. Lastly, I also wanted to take some time as a union member to share my personal perspective on the NYSET Regionalization Initiative. I believe this regional planning process, while requiring careful consideration, offers a promising path towards strengthening our schools and enhancing opportunities for our students. The key here is understanding what regionalization is, and just as importantly, what it is not. It's not about forced mergers or consolidations, but it is about exploring opportunities for shared services, joint programs, and other forms of regional cooperation that can benefit our students. It's not a top-down mandate dictating how districts must operate. Instead, it's a collaborative, locally driven process. It's about districts coming together to conduct through needs assessments, identify their unique challenges, and explore solutions that work best for our communities. This initiative recognizes that a one-size-fits-all approach simply does not work in education. It acknowledges the diverse landscape of our schools and empowers us to build upon our existing strengths. This initiative provides a framework to expand on those successes and explore new, innovative ways to collaborate. We at the GTA are cautiously optimistic about the potential of this initiative. By working together, we can leverage the power of regional planning to create stronger, more equitable, and more effective education system for all of our students. Thank you for all of your work in supporting the Greece Central School District, and have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Mock. Next up, somebody so entertaining this evening. Mr. Jones. You're always entertaining. I could listen to you speak for hours. You don't have hours, though, let's be clear.
And I also got nervous when the screens were black. I was like, I need that presentation. All right, well, my name is Brandon Jones. Thanks for having me. I'm here representing GASA, our administrative unit, and just wanted to take some time to update the board, update our community on the stuff that our administrators are doing throughout our district. And really the focus of this presentation that, I was told not an hour, so I'll cut it down to 55 minutes to make sure, is really kind of highlighting the focus that we are putting on instructional professional learning for our staff, as well as how we are working to address discipline when it comes to providing consequences, but also aligning those consequences to interventions. So district-wide, there's a lot of trainings going on. Our district-wide leaders are putting teachers through training in the areas of science with discovery ed professional learning. In addition, with the changes in living environment and earth science, switching to biology and earth and space science, our teachers are doing a lot of PL in that area as well. Those changes will take place next year, but our teachers are doing the work to prepare so that when the fall hits, they're not scrambling to figure out what they need to be doing. Also, you'll notice there's a lot of pictures of Olympia in here. That's because when I asked folks for stuff, they didn't necessarily give me pictures, so I plopped Olympia pictures in there as well. So it could be, a little plug for Olympia. Our math 6th, 7th, and 8th, as well as algebra and geometry teachers, have really been looking at accommodative formative assessment data and thinking about where our students are falling short and what kind of instructional moves and what kind of curriculum moves need to be made to help kind of close those gaps, especially for our students who are struggling. Again, that's happening district-wide. There was some curriculum work to think about where they can do those interventions, where it would make sense. In addition to that, district-wide department meetings are happening. Teachers are collaborating with each other, not just in their building, but outside of their building as well. And again, that's being led by district department folk. English Village. They're doing some great work on professional learning communities. This is making sure they're finding time for teachers to get together and really, really focus on, again, instruction. Looking at what our students need to be able to do, what's getting in the way of them doing that, how are we going to know if they've met that goal, and like if they struggle to meet that goal, what do they need to be doing in order to get there? What, as educators, do we need to be doing to support our students getting there? And of course, they're focusing on our American Reading Company curriculum, our core. They've also partnered with Center for Youth and Genesee Mental Health in order to teach our really young ones about their emotions, right? And thinking about, like, when I'm feeling this, what are appropriate ways to respond? We know if we get them early on, by the time they get older, you know, they've got skill sets to kind of manage those emotions, and we call those zones of regulations. So English Village is really kind of focusing on that. Holmes Road, see, I got pictures from Holmes Road. These are Holmes Road teachers, okay? Mr. Keelan and Mr. Barberi are doing great work over there. They are celebrating that 66% of their students are reading on grade level currently, and their goal is 68%. So it's looking like not only are they going to meet that goal, but hopefully surpass it. In addition, Holmes Road is working on really finding ways for students with disabilities to be integrated into settings with students who don't have disabilities, right? Like oftentimes our students with disabilities are isolated a little bit, and the work is how do we find ways to connect them with their peers, not just to things like recess or things like lunch, but with instruction, actual learning experiences. So they've been doing a lot of work at their staff meetings around how do we put all of our hands on deck to make sure our students with disabilities are having access to opportunities that their gen ed peers are experiencing. So kudos to the folks at Holmes Road. Arcadia Middle. Now this is a picture I had to dig for on their Facebook page. So this is Arcadia Middle, but I had to go in and do a little work. Interventions and consequences, working together to change behavior. I know there's a misconception out in the community around restorative practices, especially restorative practices replacing discipline in the way in which we know it, but that is not the case, right? What we're doing in our buildings is thinking, how do we use traditional consequences like detention, like suspension, especially in-school suspension, and instead of having kids just sitting in a room and trying to get them to do, you know, their math work, have them sitting in the room, do their math work, and then have time to reflect and learn skills that got them there and do differently. So Arcadia Middle is really working to figure out how do we combine those things in ways that make sense. Targeted skill building exercises that happen during lunchtime, led by their restorative TOSA. And then as far as instruction goes, really focusing on what we call specially designed instruction, which is, and learning for staff in that area, in hopes that they see kids who are kind of middle of the road, moving from middle of the road to on grade level. Arcadia High School, 25 ninth graders working on kind of building up their leadership skills, especially around this idea of combating drug use. We all know, and you've heard it at this very podium, around vaping in schools, vaping outside of schools, just this overuse of drugs amongst our teens. And so yes, as adults, we can go in and talk all day to kids about why they should be doing something different. But Arcadia High is really partnering with the U of R and their Above the Influence program to provide students with leadership skills so they can go out and influence their own peers around why maybe the path of drug and substance abuse isn't what we need to be doing, because it distracts us from what we should be doing, which is really kind of living a healthy lifestyle and focused on instruction. So kudos for Arcadia High. Odyssey Academy, my old stomping grounds. Staff have been really focused on the power of common formative assessments and using those common formative assessments to really figure out where students are struggling, right? Like what are we dropping the ball on, and what do we need to be doing differently as far as our everyday instruction to help those kids level up. And they're also anchoring into restorative practices as interventions for behavioral violations, right? So similar to what I was explaining with Arcadia Middle, but this idea of really anchoring into coaching cycles with staff, right? How can restorative practices look combined with academics to kind of teach kids high expectations, but also providing them high support. And then, of course, using accountability projects, meaning, hey, if a student's going to spend some time in in-school suspension, like I said before, let's give them a project to work on where they can study, like, what would this look like if I was older and I did this type of behavior? What could be the outcomes in the real world if I made these type of mishaps? And then, of course, Olympia, my stomping ground. So Olympia got a few slides. I told you it's going to be about 55 minutes. This is where the other 50 minutes come in, Mr. McCabe, okay? So listen, we've been doing a lot of great work, if I must say so myself. This year, we've been focusing really on differentiation, right? Meaning, how do we provide kids with unique learning needs to fit what they need? And we've been really focused on things like providing student choice when it comes to process, product, and content, understanding the different co-teaching models, right? So if there are multiple teachers in a room, how can we maximize all of those teachers so that we're really working with smaller group of kids and really accelerating kids who can use acceleration and helping provide remediation for kids who need reteaching. We've also allowed in our staff meetings opportunities for teachers to take what we're learning and apply it in real time. So bringing their actual lesson plans and saying, hey, this is what we're learning. We're seeing the theory on it. How do we match it to what we're actually planning? And then, of course, providing choice professional learning, right? We've started a summer retreat where teachers can come in for 3 days out of their summer and really kind of anchor in on instruction. And then when it comes to discipline, similar stuff that you've already heard me say, but really focusing with staff on shifting our mindset from only punitive consequences to punitive consequences along with teachable moments. And we've seen some great things around that, celebrating kids who are doing the right thing, because we heard that from parents and community members. Like, we hear the bad, a lot of attention seems to be focused on students who aren't making the best choices, but how do we then celebrate the kids who are? So we want to celebrate the kids who are, and so they can encourage them to keep making those good choices while also supporting our students who struggle. And I'm just going to show you some of the data for Olympia specific to show you that when you match interventions and consequences, you do get good results. So let me show you some of that data. This chart is our referral data comparison from this time last year to this time this year. Last year at Olympia, at this very time, we had over 2,000 discipline referrals. This year, we have 1,286. So we still have a lot, but we've almost cut that in half by almost 50%. There's a 37% decrease in behavioral referrals at Olympia because of the work that we are doing. In addition to that, we've seen a 40% decrease in referrals for physical altercations between students, right? So a 40% decrease in the amount of students who are solving conflicts by putting hands on each other. To me, that's a celebration, and I certainly have heard people at this very podium share specifically about Olympia and their concerns about physical interactions in that building. 27% decrease in the number of students who have been suspended from school, whether that be out of school or in school, and 40% decrease in the number of students with 20 or more behavioral referrals. So again, it's important for me to spotlight these numbers to show you that restorative practices combined with what we call traditional consequences do indeed get results, and that is the work that we are doing as a district. Not just at Olympia. It was easy for me to share that data with you because that's the building that I'm responsible for, but district-wide we're seeing similar results. With that said, I'm going to dance for you a little bit and sing some show tunes, and then I'll let you get back to it. But in all reality, GASA leaders are doing the necessary work to help staff flourish and for students to achieve. Thank you all, especially our board members and our superintendent's cabinet, for your support. We need that support. We need you all to help break down barriers that make our jobs challenging. There's certainly a lot of things happening in society today that can take us away from focusing on instruction and focusing on the social emotional learning needs of our students. And while we're dealing with that building work, we need all of you to help eliminate those barriers so that we can continue the work that we are doing. So with that said, thank you all so much. GASA update is done and complete, and I'm going to take my seat.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I don't have anybody from AgSept, Gus, or Teamsters. All right, moving in the residents forum. We have 3 speakers signed up for our residents forum this evening. Our first speaker will be Mr. Dan Perna. Welcome, Mr. Perna.
Thank you. Members of the board, thank you for providing me this forum. My name is Daniel Perna, and I am the commander of the American Legion Post 468 in Greece, and I oversee over 1,000 members and families at that post who are from the town of Greece. I'm a disabled Vietnam veteran who is here today in support of all veterans in the Greece School District. I am petitioning the Greece School District Board of Education to provide the exemption on all school taxes to all qualified veterans residing in the Greece School District. The exemptions would follow the identical veterans tax exemptions guidelines as outlined by the New York State Monroe County for county and town taxes. I'm requesting that the board resolve this exemption with a subsequent vote of yes. These school tax exemptions would definitely help many veterans on fixed incomes, those with disabilities, and also their surviving spouses. In Monroe County, the school districts of the city of Rochester, Gates-Chilike, Caledonia-Mumford, and Brockport, as well as a large number of school districts across the state already, in gratitude, provide these veterans exemptions. According to the U.S. Labor Bureau of Statistics, there are 19 million veterans living today in America. The VA estimates that that number will diminish 12.1 million in 25 years. We are losing more than we are gaining. How many veterans have we lost since 2013 when the real property tax law was expanded? Right now, approximately 3,661 veterans reside in the town of Greece. What will that number be if this partial tax exemption gets voted down and we have to wait again to bring this to a future board? We are a diminishing demographic, mostly made up of 1,320 Vietnam veterans over the age of 70, and not all are property owners. Let's really mean thank you for your service and provide all present and future veterans this school tax exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perna. Our next speaker is Mr. Timothy Smith. Mr. Smith, welcome this evening.
Good evening. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Dan said. My name is Timothy Smith. I've been here before. In fact, on January 7th, 2025, it was I that petitioned the board to provide the exemption on school taxes to all qualified veterans residing in the Greece Central School District. As Dan said, these exemptions would follow the guidelines already in place by Monroe County, New York State for town and county taxes. At that January 7th, I also requested the board to put this petition on the agenda for a public meeting to resolve with a subsequent vote of yes. Once petitioned, the next step in the procedure is to have a public hearing on this issue. The 2013 amendment to the New York State real property tax law specifically states a public hearing on the issue must take place and is the required responsibility of the board, with subsequent vote required by the board hopefully by prior to March 1st, 2025. There is no argument to be made not to have a public hearing. The residents of the Greece Central School District must have the opportunity to provide to the Board of Education their thoughts, opinions, and even feelings on this issue of school tax exemptions for the veterans. The board has already provided a study on the issue and determined that a public hearing must take place. So what are you guys waiting for? There are currently 3,829 veterans receiving their town and county tax exemptions and would be immediately eligible for the school tax exemption once passed. Per the board study for the 2025 school tax bills, this would cause a financial increase on each non-veteran taxpayer of the district, a maximum of 48 cents per thousand of assessed value. For example, a 200,000 assessed property value would pay an additional $96 a year or $8 a month. What the study does not take into consideration is that 65% of the 3,829 veterans are already senior citizens and are the combat veterans with ages between 60 and 90, having served during the Korean War of 1950 to 55, the Vietnam War between 55 to 75, and the Gulf Wars of the 1990s. Therefore, the number of eligible veterans and combat veterans who receive the most exemption will decrease rather than increase. So the financial impact will also decrease. Also, the study alludes to possible negative impacts on various programs such as star and low income deductions. These allegations are not fully realized, and negative reference like this must be avoided and not guessed at. Also, our state legislature has both recently passed bills, State Senate Bill S-3982 and State Assembly Bill A-3199, which are on their way to the governor to be signed, whereby the state will cover any costs associated from any veteran exemption
Mr.
on
Smith, I'm
school
gonna have to have you
taxes.
wrap up.
So the board should should take these bills into consideration in decision-making. I believe February 18th or the 25th is the current scheduled date for the public hearing. Let's make sure that the notice and the hearing takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next up is Mr. Ostrander. Welcome again.
Good to see you finally, huh?
Yes.
You know, I was running for the school board 5 years ago, and then Sean said that, I look forward to working with you. And I said, no, my wife has cancer, so I backed out. And I'd probably be sitting up here. How we doing, Bill? So I had stuff in front of me to talk about veterans and stuff like that. Today we had Mr. Rosario, Semper Fi. Now, he just left, and I just had a quick conversation. There's not one person in this room or on this board that will go up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service. Am I correct? We all say thank you for our service. We feel good about it, but we feel better with a little commitment from the board and town of Greece in regards to our taxes. I came in here a little upset that my tax bill went up 31.7% from 20 to 24. But listening to this gentleman over here and some of the things that they're doing in the schools with the students makes me feel a lot better. But in the Marine Corps, it's honor, courage, and commitment. You have to find the honor and the courage and the commitment to say thank you to our veterans. Thank you for your service. Let's help you out a little bit. There's 3,829 registered veterans in the town of Greece that currently receive the tax credit. I'm not as old as a couple of these guys over here, okay? But I'm getting close. I'm 63. So you as board members have to find it in your heart. You want to say thank you to a veteran? Say thank you. We're all on fixed incomes, okay? 31.7% tax increase is a lot of money while you're on a fixed income. Okay, so not asking to get it all back, but a percentage. Follow the guidelines and the rules that Monroe County has and other school districts have done. Find the courage, find the commitment, and find the honor to do the right thing, to thank a veteran. I do a concert every year at the Legion in Greece, and one thing bothers me the most. I have to go out and raise funds for wounded men and women of the military, those suffering from mental illness, drug and alcohol addiction, homelessness. We as a community go out there. Mr. Maloney's my sidekick. We have to go out and beg and plead for money from the community. There's people out there that give you the last $5 they had in their pocket. Seems to be the ones that have the less give the most. Just ask that, and it bothers me going out because that's something that the government should be doing to help our veterans. There's too many veterans out there that are stuck on drugs. Mental awareness is huge today, as it is in the school district, I believe. So I'll end it with honor, courage, and commitment. Find it in your heart. Say thank you to a veteran. Say thank you to their families. And I appreciate the time. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. That concludes our residents' forum. We're going to jump to item 11.01. Can I so move to the table? I'll just hit first resolve. Therefore, be it resolved that a public hearing will be held in regards to the veterans' tax exemption on February 25th, 2025, 6:30 in this building, Rochester, New York, 14612, to receive public comment on the matter of a veterans' tax exemption. Can I so move that to the table, please, Mr. Maloney? Seconded by Ms. Farmer. Any comments, questions, or concerns on holding a public hearing on February 25th? Do you have a question or a comment? Sure, fire away. Ms. Farah.
I would just like to make a quick comment. I appreciate you guys for coming today. Nothing serves prouder than actually voting this in for you guys. The military runs deep in my family. From my grandfather on, he was in the armed services, the Air Force. One of his siblings passed on. Since then, he has given us the middle name Joe, and we have carried it down traditions in our family for the first woman born. So it runs deep in my family. My father was a Marine. My brother went into the Marines as well. He's now in the Air Force and a commander in logistics. So I appreciate your service tremendously. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, with that, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Maloney.
Yes.
Mr. Bonagario.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Vice President Farmer.
Yes.
Ms. Farah.
Proudly, yes.
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 And I'm yes, that passes 9-0. So we will host a public hearing on Tuesday, February 25th at 6:30. And just so you know, so everybody's clear, there'll be a sign-up sheet that night. You can sign up that night to speak up until the start of the meeting. So at 6:30, I'll pull the sheet, and there'll be no speakers after that. So whoever gets here, sign up on the sheet if you want to do that, or you can contact our board clerk, Lori Manhart, ahead of time, and she can get you on that list. Okay? Great. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to item 2.01, staffing. Can I say move the staffing to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Maloney, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on staffing? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Assistant Superintendent Larson.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to introduce some new folks this evening, just been appointed. First off, our new principal of Athena Middle School, Mr. Todd Wallenhorst. 7 years ago, Todd had the opportunity to come back as an educator to the Greece Central School District, where he grew up and lives currently with his wife Monique, daughter Briar, who attends Pinebrook Elementary, and son Jet, who attends the Early Learning Center. Over the past 7 years, he has had the privilege of working at Greece Arcadia High School as an assistant principal, where he's made tons of memories with his Titan family, who he will miss greatly and who have shown him just how special the district continues to be. Todd is a proud graduate of SUNY Brockport for his undergraduate degree in history and his administrative certificate. He also received his teacher certification from Nazareth College. Todd grew up in Greece with his parents, Tim and Debbie, and two brothers, Dan and Nathan. He and his brothers are all proud graduates of Greece Athena High School. Todd expressed that being back in the building is a huge source of pride for him. Todd and his wife Monique moved back to Greece over 10 years ago and were excited to grow their family here. And it's with great pride that his children, Briar and Jet, currently attend Greece schools and will be fellow Trojans in the future. Todd is excited to continue to work in the Greece Central School District as the principal of Athena Middle School. He said, unquote. It is a special place for me, and I look forward to carrying on the tradition of helping students achieve academically as well as socially and emotionally with the dedicated staff and families. Congratulations, Todd.
All right, it's picture time. Mr. Wallenhorst, Superintendent Smalling, Deputy Fleming, Assistant Superintendent Zaffitz will be the first round, family will be second round, third round will be the new Athena staff, and last will be the Arcadia staff that's here in support. So 4 pictures. Your OCD's on top of it. Come on, get that whole family in there. I know, I'm trying. Nope. Swing and a miss. That's all right. Athena? Athena middle? I just like torturing people with the pictures. All right, Arcadia. Oh, we gotta get Mr. Fulkerson in one too. He'll have to be in the next one. You snuck in, I didn't see him. I'm surprised we have the same hairline. I do like that. The new hires though, everybody's got a hairline like mine. I kinda like that.
One of the criteria.
Mr. Fulkerson and Mr. Longhorse, since you're the new team at the Athena campus, yeah, we all go to the same guy. Mr. Butler, you. It's ready. Congratulations. Next up.
All right, next up, I'm going to invite a kind of familiar face to us, Mr. Jeremiah Johnson, who will be taking over the role for Mr. Wallenhorst at Arcadia as an assistant principal. So Jeremiah joined us in early November as a house assistant principal at Arcadia High School and is now being promoted to the probationary position. He's made a great impression on the Arcadia community so far, and he's really excited to continue in Titan territory. So congratulations to you.
Don't sit down, we gotta do more pictures. He'll never be a principal. Baker, isn't this you?
Turn gray.
He's gonna have to go to my barber. So you want to do a family picture? Sure. Okay, great. And then Arcadia, tap you again. I don't think she was here last time, was she? Oh, okay.
Perfect, I'll send you some.
Arcadia crew.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, I'd like to welcome Jessica Mazakowski, our new house assistant principal. Come on up.
You gotta come on down. It's like The Price is Right.
Come on down.
Right in front, right front and center.
That way folks at home get to see as well. Jessica, oh, I should put on my glasses, sorry, folks. I used to have to do this. This is a woman's version of balding.
No,
You get the.
I
you
got
glasses,
double,
right?
so
You
I
stay
don't
around
know.
long enough to get the glasses. Jessica received her bachelor's degree from SUNY Oswego and her graduate degrees from the University of Rochester and St. John Fisher University. She worked as an ESL teacher for the last 9 years at Eastridge High School. Jessica's favorite part of her job has been the connections she's made with all of her students, families, and staff. Greece Central is a large district that has a lot of diversity and opportunities, and she is looking forward to learning more and being involved in the community here. Jessica studied abroad in Spain, and that has continued her love for traveling as a way to learn more about people and where they come from. She looks forward to all of the opportunities Greece has to offer and continuing to grow her career here in Greece Central. Outside of work, Jessica loves competing in races, learning new languages, and the Buffalo Bills. She's very close with her family and loves exploring new places with them. Congratulations and welcome to Greece Central.
Thank you. Hey, she's the first one to get the picture thing. Baker, you might as well jump in too.
Okay?
And then we'll do family. Family? Yeah, you're telling me, I'm about half hour past mine. I'm getting cranky.
Slide over this way, just a smidge, sorry, thank you.
Got one more. We gotta get all the ball guys in pictures. Todd, you're next. I gotta figure out a picture for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all of you. If you guys want to sneak out, I get it. I wish I could go with you. She looks how I feel. Thank you all. Congratulations. All right, moving on to 2.02, tenure. Can I have somebody move the tenure to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, or concerns on tenure? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0, and I just want to take a moment to recognize Stacy Brindisi. Congratulations on your tenure. I think you've been here almost as long as I have. All right, moving on to 2.03, Greece Teachers Association additional FTE. Can I have someone move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to the non-unit rate sheet. Can I have someone move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stencil, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 2.05, the 913 exam. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Moore, seconded by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. And 2.06, the Gus contract vote. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Stencil, seconded by Mr. Bonagorio. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? I just have a quick question, Assistant Superintendent Larson. Do you know what the membership ratified the contract by? I was going to ask earlier and I forgot.
Yeah, it was 60 yes to 30 no.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. With that, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 4.01, transportation update. Superintendent Smalley. I almost called you Groutman again.
Sure she's watching.
I'm having a little stroke. I got to keep catching myself.
I'd like to call up our Executive Director of Student Operations, Dave Richardson, for this presentation. Thank you, Dave.
What are you waiting for the music to start?
Just waiting for the, I don't know, the TVs for the guests as well. There it is. All right, good evening. Thanks for having me. This is, I'm going to review some of the latest data regarding transportation to give you our annual update. So we're going to talk a little bit about the changes impacted by the walking distance change that you approved back on June 4th, and as well as our current challenges and celebrations, and there'll be time for questions as well. So our current state, so as you look here, you're going to see a 3-year history of the current state of transportation with how many students are being transported. The first column is 2 years ago, and the middle column is last year, and the column on the right is the current year. So as you can see there, a little bit of a decline, as you have been hearing about. We are seeing a decline in student enrollment. That is not the total number of students in Greece. That is the total number of students receiving transportation, okay? The number of bus runs, obviously declining. You've heard about the driver shortage. We'll highlight a little bit about that at a little later on. The number of regular drivers, regular meaning full-time staff that are coming to work each day. The number of drivers/office staff that are subs. So that fourth line there, you are seeing a sub decline. So there's 12 subs that are working and roughly 12 office staff. But remember, office staff and subs are not necessarily available every single day. So availability and other commitments comes into play. Excuse me. And then the number of walkers, which has pretty much remained flat over the last 3 years. Continuing on, the number of private, parochial, and charter schools continues to stay flat. It rises with, then there's a few closures that have happened over the years as well. The number of students that are attending these 51 current private, parochial, and charter schools. Remember, all you need is one student going to one school, and they need a bus. So whether there's one student on that bus or 16, it's a bus which eats up a driver. Number of child care apps, that's actually declining. And we continue to see that downward trend. The number of contracted runs, this shouldn't be a surprise, has risen over the last 3 years because the number of drivers has declined. So obviously we're contracting out more, which is something we wish we did not have to do. Number of out-of-district special ed locations. That number continues to rise. And that number, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then the number of McKinney-Vento students. This continues to be a challenge for us because of the 50-mile rule. So if a student is designated McKinney-Vento status and lives within 50 miles of the district is obligated and required to provide transportation. So right now we have 185 McKinney-Vento, and 83 of them are living inside the boundaries of Greece. But when you look at that, 102 are not. Walking distances. So back on June 4th, the board approved to increase the walking distance for elementary students to the bus stop from 800 feet to 1,056 feet. That's actually aligned with the guidance from SED, which is 1,056 feet is 2/10 of a mile. We have not seen significant savings. We're talking about an additional 200 feet. So we're not talking significant change for our students. Where we did save quite a bit is our grade 6 through 8 students who were walking up to a mile to school, but prior to this year, only had to walk up to 1,500 feet to the bus stop. So we matched that walking distance to school with the walking distance to the bus stop. And then grades 9 through 12, the distance was 1.5 miles walking to school, but again, only having to walk 1,500 feet to the bus stop. So that now matches as well. So when you match that, you get quite a bit of savings. So here's some examples that I wanted to share with you. Here's a bus run that you can see on the left, and those 3 green dots are the current 3 stops, okay? But last year, due to the walking distance being up to 1,500 feet, that same map was 7 stops. So when you're able to consolidate stops, you're able to put more students on buses as well as get to school on time. There's an example from Athena. Again, the same image. Last year was 12 stops for that bus, and this year it's 6. So yes, students are walking farther to the bus stop. And then a middle school example for Arcadia Middle School. Last year, you're looking at a run here of 16 stops in that map snapshot, which is now 5 stops for our buses. So some of the benefits as a result, by matching the walking distances, is we were able to eliminate 5 to 8 runs. Now, why do you say 5 to 8, Dave? It's because runs are not identical year to year. So some of our runs last year were partnered with St. Lawrence, a private parochial school, a charter school. No longer are they partnered with some of our private parochial charter schools because we outsourced those due to the driver shortage. So runs and the combination of runs are not identical year after year after year. So when you look at this, we were able to save somewhere between 5 and 8 runs when we all said and done. Buses no longer enter certain tracks, resulting in fewer stops, as I outlined just a short time ago, as well as it's easier for our subs. So obviously our buses are starting when it's still dark out, and our buses in the afternoon are finishing when it's getting dark. You know, looking for house numbers, looking for unique stops is very difficult. Mailboxes, you're looking for those landmarks, and that's very difficult. When we are able to utilize corner stops, much easier to identify that bus stop for our subs. The persistent driver shortage continues to impact our operations. Thank you to the Board of Ed and Gina and her team for increasing the wage, because that's definitely helped. Prior to this year, we would see anywhere between 1 to 3, maybe 4 people in driver training, and now we're seeing somewhere between 3 and 5 at any one time. We're still losing some of our more seasoned and veteran staff due to age and health and in years of service and retiring from their second job. So we're still losing drivers at a greater rate than we are hiring them. Supporting school requests. This is a challenge. So we try to keep field trips between 9:30 and 1:30 in that middle of the day window. But some extracurricular opportunities for students just start earlier than 9:30 and go beyond 1:30. So there are times when a request comes in that we have to find a way to make it work. But the schools and the cabinet members and DCIA directors have been very supportive and understanding of the challenges we face. Our special ed sites continue to spread out due to staffing issues at BOCES. So where maybe 4 or 5 programs might have been housed in one academic center at BOCES 1 or BOCES 2 has now been outsourced to different locations in and around Monroe County. So one bus taking several students to a location on Big Ridge Road for 3 or 4 programs. Now 3 or 4 programs are in different sites. That's 2 or 3 more buses that you need. So again, it adds to the challenge. Buses still travel outside a school's boundary for McKinney-Veno, for childcare, for school of choice, and for special ed. So those 4 areas continue to be a challenge, and it's just a reality of what we work with each and every day. And our buses are full. So we're trying to maximize every seat. We are calling parents of students that we have not seen to say, is your child no longer riding the bus? That frees up a seat for us. And we're trying to look for ways to consolidate and compact our runs to meet the driver shortage. One of the additional challenges that we face is who we partner with to outsource those private parochial and charter school runs. Wishful thinking, I wish we didn't have to outsource any of these runs. But the reality of what we face, we do. And it's hard to control the way that service is delivered, who they're hiring, when those drivers are going out, because they're not on our headquarters, and we're not on site to monitor their work. So when we find out about delays, or we find out that there was a hiccup of some sort, oftentimes that comes from a frustrated parent, or it may come from you because someone reached out to you. It's definitely a challenge, and it's something that we're trying to find a way to take back as many of those runs as possible, but ultimately it starts with our staffing, and it starts with the numbers of people that we're able to work with. And I appreciate the support that you have provided and the understanding that you have provided, because it's not easy to have an outside company providing supports for students when you are not there to manage how that work is delivered. So some of the positives that we continue to see, Google Forms for the child care, private parochial charter school, and the junior senior opt-ins have been very successful. Those applications are currently open now for the 25-26 school year, and parents, we encourage you, to get those in by April 1st, which is the state deadline. So those applications are currently up and running on the district website. I mentioned before the high understanding and flexibility with the schools. When unfortunately there's times when runs are not covered, we're calling the schools. We've got nothing but support and understanding and flexibility from school staff and personnel who are reaching out to parents. Even parents are reaching out saying, I understand you're short. We're doing what we can to help. We're doing our best to try not to impact those same runs day in and day out, because that creates an equity issue as well. Fewer days this year when runs are not covered, a little bit of a celebration. Parents and guardians are understanding of our situation, so we appreciate their support. And like I said before, the minimal impact on extracurricular and athletics, as well as I do want to say the support all of you have provided. So you reaching out saying, hey, I know you're short. I know it's difficult. I want to make you aware of this situation, and working with the transportation department and sticking to the April 1st deadline and being consistent with that response to parents who may be frustrated, or community members or private parochial charter schools who may be frustrated because of the difficult situation that we're in. So thank you. Questions?
Mr. Bongorio.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, and I appreciate the hard work that you all have been doing. I know it's been an ongoing challenge, and you're doing a great job under continuing difficult circumstances, right? So thank you, making a lot of progress. I'm wondering if you can shed maybe a little bit of insight. We heard some comments about regionalization, and Greece is going to be participating in that process. Do you anticipate possible opportunities for regionalization to assist in this effort, and maybe
Sure.
how?
So we're always looking at opportunities. So I'm always willing to have a discussion about ways to work with our neighbors. We tried to look at this, just a side note, we tried to look at this with Gates in Churchville and Hilton for transporting students to some of our secondary private schools, where we would all pick them up individually, meet at a centralized location, and then instead of 15 buses going to Aquinas, maybe it's 6 full buses that go, and then those buses can return to their districts to transport elementary kids or do other runs. Up here or globally, it's great thinking. When you start peeling the layers and looking at the finer details, like school calendars, like pickup times, like type of service. Some districts do door-to-door, like trying to find a regionalized location, insurance, safety. You start looking at those other things, it presented a significant challenge. So always looking at opportunities. I'm happy to partake in those discussions, but there's definitely some finer details that would have to be worked out.
And just a quick follow-up, it sounds like you have been working on that kind of thing, that collaborative kind of thing, before the regionalization rule was
100%.
applied. So we've been doing that right along.
100%.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
thought that was the case. Thank
Yep.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Richardson. Great presentation. I echo my board colleagues' congratulations for the progress that's been made. I had one clarification and then one question. You had mentioned the McKinney-Vento students. I saw the 185 active, 83 in Greece. So the 102 are those students who attend Greece schools but don't live here?
Correct.
So you have to go someplace else to get them?
I have to go outside of the Greece Central School District boundaries to pick them up and bring them home each day.
Great, and that's intended to allow them to at least maintain the educational stability in their lives
That
while
is
they're
correct.
navigating homelessness?
That is correct.
Okay, great, thank you. The other thing that I was just wondering if you had any data for us on, but you mentioned, I know you take it very personally when a student misses instruction because a bus is late, and you mentioned that we've had fewer instances of that this year. Do you have any data on that, Dave, to tell us how much improvement we've made there, or is that information?
Yeah, I would say we ended last year, prior to the high schools going into exams, we were looking at delays 3 to 4 days a week. And now we're somewhere between 1 and 3 days a week, and sometimes none.
Okay.
Yeah. So the delay, there is a way, there is a method to our madness, I'll call it. We try not to impact elementary runs at all because we know parents are counting on those students, the supervision issue, et cetera. We're trying not to impact the same runs each time. We're trying not to impact special education. So like today, we had one run not covered, and it was Arcadia High, Arcadia Middle, and those students either found a ride home or took the late bus. So there was transportation. It wasn't at 2:05, it was at 3:20. But the elementary portion of that run was Patty Hill. We had that covered. So that's an example of, trying to meet the needs. We figure secondary students can either wait in the cafeteria if they don't have a ride and can be more self-supervised, more so than our elementary kids.
Great. Well, thank you. Just the complexity of what you manage every single day with all of those elements is pretty mind-boggling, so.
Yeah. Putting
kudos.
together a puzzle twice a day.
Yep. Kudos to you and your whole team.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Maloney?
Well, kudos to you, Mr. David Richardson. I mean, you drive a bus
I do drive a bus.
almost every day.
Not every day.
Not every day.
And less this year than last year, so another data point that I'm driving less, so which is good.
As far as our drivers go, I know that when we outsource to Ontario, and we outsource to First Student, they're paying their drivers unemployment during the off-seasons. Is there a possibility, I know Romeo's having a heart attack right now, but is there a possibility that we can do that, or is there a state mandate why we can't do that? Or is there, let's face it, I mean, they're making a profit still and billing us and paying the unemployment. Is there a reason why we can't pay the
I
unemployment?
defer to you.
Or do you prefer not to answer me?
I mean, that's a matter for collective negotiation, so I'm gonna rule that we shouldn't discuss that in a public setting, 'cause that's a
Okay.
matter of collective negotiations, according to the Taylor law. Sorry.
That's okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Bonnegorio?
So Mr. Maloney's question, maybe Mr. McKeever will rule this one out as well, but Mr. Maloney's question reminded me of a conversation that came up at the recent legislative breakfast, where it was acknowledged that one of the challenges in recruiting bus drivers is you've got the runs in the morning, the runs in the afternoon, the downtime in the middle, and just, a quality of life balance to some degree. Someone from another district was talking about how they use their bus drivers to do things like bus cleaning and things like that, that can fill in those gaps. Is that, that sounds like that might come into the question of negotiation.
We offer that.
We do,
So-
okay.
So our drivers are offered, with the work through Human Resources, opportunities to provide custodial work as well as work in food service during that middle of the day portion. Yeah,
Okay.
so an opportunity to make additional income and accrue some additional hours, should they choose.
And just fill in that
Sure,
gap, yeah.
yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep,
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
thank you.
Moving on, item 4.02, the 25-26 executive budget state aid. Superintendent Smalley.
I am going to invite Mr. Romeo Kalili. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I've got a couple of presentations for tonight. One is a short presentation on our state aid that was addressed in the governor's budget in about mid-January, and then we're going to also share tonight an initial budget for the 25-26 school year first pass. But on the executive state aid, just some highlights to share from the governor's January 14th address. What's not on the sheet is one of the things that came out was that the New York State does have a balanced budget at $252 billion. It's up about 3.6% or about $8.6 billion, but it is balanced at this point. And New York State also indicates that they have a current fiscal year balance of about $3.5 billion on hand for the current year. Most of that's driven by more than anticipated tax receipts that have come in for the year. So they're in good shape for this year. They're still projecting a couple gaps over the next 2 years, but they're smaller than what they had projected back in mid-year around June or July. A couple of the items that were addressed, it's the highest school aid total for 25-26 at about $37 billion. It's increased about 4.7% or $1.7 billion, which is a request that most people advocating for schools was asking for, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.6, 1.7 billion. Foundation aid increases about $1.46 billion higher, or 6%. Again, a good number. Gets foundation aid up to about $26 billion. And one of the items that was in controversy last year was the changing of how CPI was calculated when they did this. This year, they went with the current CPI of 3.1%. So it was clean across the board, so there was no arguing with that. And the proposal for all districts is a minimum of 2%. And there were some other changes incorporated into the formula. And one was to replace the current poverty census with a new measure that's updatable and more current. And a second was to replace the free and reduced lunch measure, again, with a new measure that is updatable and more current. So those have helped many districts, and for those that it may not have, there's at least a 2% increase. Expense-based aids, that's our transportation aid, our BOCES aid, those type of things where you spend the money and get it back the following year, are fully funded with no changes at this time. They're up about $10.5 million, or 2.2%. The budget does include $376 million for universal free school meals. It's up about, depending on where you read it, $160 to $196 million over last year, and that again would provide free breakfast and lunch to all students across the state. Community schools is maintained as a set-aside, as it was last year. Charter school funding levels continued to the same amount, no changes there. No changes for universal pre-K. And the prior year adjustment queue, there was no allocated funds in the governor's budget for that. I think we mentioned it last time. The current queue total is owed by the state to districts about $308 million. For us in Greece, it's just over $700,000 that right now there's no money in the budget to pay that out for next year. As we look at what was proposed by the governor, the first column here is what the board and what we adopted for our budget for 24-25 school year compared to the middle column, which is the governor's proposed state aid. Just talking through that, the third column, again, is the variance between the two. I'll point you to the bottom of the screen with the red circle. We, at this point, when you take out universal pre-K, it's in the numbers, but we have to back it out because it's not part of the general fund budget. It is $167.2 million. That's $8.5 million more than what we adopted last year, or an increase of about almost 5.5%. Some of the items in the middle column, just to bring to attention, the foundation aid at almost $119 million. That's up almost 8%. That is significantly more than we had thought. Part of that is obviously due to the changes in the formula and letting that run to full scale again, so we're glad with that. However, we think that number could change. We did make some changes. Again, I want to back up one step. I apologize. These numbers are based off a database that the governor runs. The database date is mid-November. We were still making some changes in November, December, and even through January. So when they rerun the database in February, this foundation aid number could change slightly. We're just not sure if that's going to be a plus or minus, but it's not going to be anything really significant. We also look at building aid. You see that right now we're getting about $2.1 million less than what we got last year. We believe that number is going to increase. Again, this is run as of November 15th. We sent in what's called final cost reports at the end of December. When we complete a project, that begins to generate aid. That is not reflective in these numbers at this point. When they rerun in February, those numbers should be updated for those final cost reports. We also see a decrease of almost $600,000 in public access cost aid. We're looking at that and hopefully see an increase in that when the legislative budget comes out. Could be higher. BOCES aid could also be a little bit higher based on what we had spent last year. We're taking a closer look at those numbers as well. And overall, with some of these, we're meeting with our financial partners this Thursday to review state aid, each of these line items, and to kind of hone in on a better number that we think we're going to get for from the legislature in March. So again, we think some of these numbers will change to the good, which will help us a little bit on the revenue side.
I'm just gonna have you swing right into the next one, and then we'll do all
Then do
questions.
questions?
It's all related.
All right. So as we have done in past years, this is our first pass at an initial budget based on very conservative revenue numbers, very conservative expenditure numbers. And again, one note that I did want to make, prior to the previous 3 years, we tried to stay true to that process, which was we would take and do a true rollover with some adjustments in the budget, and then show the revenues we anticipate on the first pass, expenditures on the first pass, and show if there was any gap. Over the last 3 years, with the foundation aid increases in the formula being implemented, we really didn't have to do a lot of that because we had more revenues to cover everything that we wanted to do. We're back to, I believe, the process we were pre-COVID, which is we're going to see some gaps, and we've got to work at closing those gaps before we get to the superintendent's recommended budget. We had said that along over the last 2 or 3 years. We think we're there now. So we're going to, run first passes, go back and look at things, take another look, and have a balanced budget over the next few weeks. But we're back to our traditional patterns, just at bigger numbers and at a higher level. So as we look at our initial revenues, we pretty much held everything flat with the exception of a couple items that you'll see variances on here. Everything, again, is adopted revenues on the left with estimated revenues on the right. Looking down to the bottom line, we're estimating right now about $9.3 million increase in revenues on those select lines for a total revenue budget right now at $317 million. As we go on to the next page, we talk a little bit about the variances within each of them. So on the pilot payments, we're showing an increase of $187,000. That's due to a new pilot coming on board. It's from Clear Choice. They are a hearing and balancing business that will be going up at Canal Ponds. That pilot will generate for us an additional $187,000 for next year. State aid, again, is from the governor's executive budget that we just looked at $8.5 million. The tax levy in the STAR, we did a preliminary tax cap calculation. The only piece that was missing for us is our debt service number, and again, we won't know that better until Thursday this week when we meet with our financial partners to review that. But initially, keeping the items flat that we know and changing the ones that we know definite parameters on, we're thinking the levy will be around $2.5 million, or just about a 2% increase right now is what we're figuring. The appropriated fund balance went down $2 million. Last year's budget, or the 24-25 budget, did include appropriated fund balance to update 5 playgrounds and 2 outdoor pavilions. That work will get done shortly, and we won't need that in the budget for next year, so it's been eliminated. When we look at the summary for the revenues in a more traditional sense, you can see our state aid, our levy, our other local sources. That, in that number for $20.1 million is sales tax and interest earning and BOCES refund and health and welfare revenues. Federal sources and transfers are being flat right now, again, until we meet with our partners. But just to recap, $9.3 million increase in revenues on the first pass. As we move on to our expenditures, a couple pre-notes. So this initial expenditure budget includes all current staffing and vacancies brought over from the current year to next year. It includes the impact, the revenue, or the cost impact of 2 recently negotiated contracts. All the non-salary lines have been held flat from 24-25 to 25-26, with the exception of some select line items that we made adjustments for. Those primarily would be healthcare, fuel, utilities, and then FICA, ERS, and TRS. As our salaries go up, our payroll costs go up, our ERS and TRS payments go up. Healthcare, as we know, we were informed by RASH, next year's increase is 14.4% increase. That's reflected in here. And then some new or continued initiatives are also included in here. There's some technology stuff, some BOCES items that are non-technology, as well as continuation, expansion of the ARC core implementation. You can see on this chart the specific line items. Overall, we are at about $323 million on the first pass for the expenditure budget, up about $15.2 million, or about just under 5%. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see some of the larger variances and some of the explanations for it. Again, as I mentioned, salaries are up about $6.0 million. We had shown that that was an increase of just over 4%. It includes all contracted salaries, vacancies, extra work forms, substitute estimates, individual contract agreements, and staffing to support student needs. And as we think about some of the contracts, our salaries are up about 4%. All of our, not just ours, but all of our bargaining unit increases, these are contractual items, they're all between 3.25 and 3.5%. So being at 4% is not surprising or alarming for us, given that we've got additional staff, we've got some substitute costs in there, we've got vacancies in there. So it seems like a reasonable number. The equipment, supplies, contract services, utilities, up $1.1 million. Those are increases in those specific lines that we talked about. BOCES, we're continuing to increase our contractual services with BOCES. For instance, money for, bless you, monies for additional community schools, Leader in Me, arts and education, and other items that we are running through the BOCES program now. One of the big advantages for us to use this BOCES line and to increase that is monies that we spend in BOCES in the current year come back to us as BOCES aid the following year, versus spending it in a non-BOCES COSER and you get zero back the following year. So we are constantly looking to move anything we could to the BOCES line when we can do it, and this is sort of a reflection for that. Internal transfers, again, that was the elimination of the one-time replacement of the playgrounds and the 2 outdoor learning environments, offset a little bit by we've increased our transfer to capital. And we're going to take another look at that line, but right now we've increased it from $100,000 to $500,000, and we're going to go back and take a look at that and come back to the board with an explanation on that. ERS, retirement system, up about $1 million. Again, that's about a 17% increase, but the rates have gone from 15.2% of payroll to 16.5% of payroll. It's a significant increase, and we've got more employees on in the initial budget than we had in 24-25. Healthcare and dental premiums up about almost 10%. Again, we were notified for 2025, which will impact the second half of next year. Rates are up 14.4%. We don't know what January through June of 2026 will come back with, but internal discussions within the RASH is we still see double digits for the 2026 calendar year as well. Looking again at more traditional view of the summary, again, $323 million budget, $15.2 million increase, or just under 5%. There are still some outstanding items we need to take a look at. One is staffing to enrollment, which we go through in cabinet. And also HR does their staffing reviews as well. We'll get those numbers in mid-March to see if there's adjustments that need to be made to the expenditure budget based on that review process. We have other staffing requests that are pending that need to be reviewed by cabinet that may impact the expense budget, and then there are non-staffing requests out too that we have in hand that need to be reviewed and go through cabinet as a process that we may need to adjust the expenditure number by. Overall, again, when we take our first pass at this, we're looking at just under a $6 million gap as a first pass. Couple things to know. One, it's a big, it's a big number, but we will manage this by reviewing revenues, expenditures, kind of going through things on a second pass and a third pass. I believe we'll see some additional revenues come in from the state, and we'll update those next time around. There will be changes in the revenues and expenditures, and we'll keep the board abreast of what those changes are when we come back for the update. But one thing is for certain, there will be no layoffs as a result of this cap for next year.
Questions? Mr. Butler?
Thanks, Romeo, for the presentation. You had in the second presentation here on slide 4 where you broke down the initial revenue, there's a line of federal sources. The dollar amount is, I mean, $450,000 is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but as compared to our overall budget, it's a relatively small number. Are there other federal dollars that come through New York State that are included in our state aid numbers, or is that's all in the
They
control
would all
of
be
the
in the
state?
special aid fund,
Okay.
normally. This is Medicaid, Medicaid or Medicare? Medicaid. Medicaid revenues that come in.
The 450?
Yeah, and it
Okay.
does go to the general, it comes into the general fund.
Okay.
All the other federal, I'm sure there might be an exception some, but all the federal stuff, even if it goes through the state, goes into the special aid fund.
Okay.
Not the general fund.
Okay.
So again, it does impact the district, it just doesn't impact the general fund budget, which is what comes before the board. So when we do these presentations, there's the general fund, there's special aid fund, which are the grants, there's the food service fund, there's the capital fund. The board reviews the general fund budget, which houses resident taxpayer money that comes to the district, as opposed to the federal grants, capital plans, or food service. So all the titles, the IDEAs, all those other federal items fall in the special aid fund, which is not included here.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful.
Ms. Lake?
Did you say, thank you for the presentation. Did you say that they were covering universal pre-K?
Well, the universal pre-K funding, I'll go back, it's the same level as it was last year, like $2.9 million. So we get those monies in, let me back up 10 seconds. The state always includes universal pre-K in our state aid runs, but that money flows to the special aid, the grant funds, because UPK is a grant. So it's included in the state aid, and on the previous slide, we back it off because it does not reside in the general fund. Last year, it was $2.9 million. This year, it's $2.9 million. No change, but that funds our universal pre-K program.
Okay. Jeremy, does that cover all of our citizens for pre-K? Do we have that for all of our kids?
Universal pre-K?
Uh-huh.
They
have
access to it.
Yeah, so I thought about that earlier today. I haven't gotten I got a 90% answer for you. In past years, UPK, because of the way the layers were structured, you had to fill out one bucket to get access to the next bucket, to the next layer, then you had to get, so there was always sufficient monies available, but it was hard to get to it. Last year, or the year before, I think it was last year, they changed the structure and they allowed it to be a lot easier to get to the funding. Due to that, in prior years, I would have said the general fund supplements a little bit of the UPK program. In the current year, the last year, I don't think that's true any longer, but I sent that out for a question today, and I just haven't gotten a response on it. But I think the answer is no. We don't spend any monies, but if that changes, I will update you on that via email.
So every family that wants it can get it?
Not entirely. Space is always an issue.
Assistant Superintendent Fleitler.
Mary, I'm sorry, I think your question might be if we are able to support all of the families who are expressing interest in enrolling in pre-K, is that accurate?
That's it.
Okay, so it's not a funding issue, it's a space issue. So currently, we have about 150 families on a wait list from last year that weren't able to be placed because our current programs, both in district, and then we have 4 community-based organization partnerships. They're all at capacity in terms of what we're able to provide currently, but we are seeking to continue to expand that, which would be able to be funded through the current funds that we have. It's a matter of making sure that we have appropriate partnerships with community-based organizations, and that takes time. So we do have our hopes on that in the future.
Okay, another question.
Sure.
Is that, did I hear it was lottery that?
Yeah, so we're in that process currently. So those who are interested can submit their interest through the application process, and the application closes on March 1st. And following that, there'll be a lottery that occurs.
Okay, one more. I'm sorry, can I?
It depends on what it is, because we're getting off of the budget here, talking about pre-K. So if it's a budget question, you can follow up with
No,
the budget. Okay,
but-
then we're gonna move on.
All right, thank you.
Vice President Farmer?
Thank you, Romeo. My question is on page 3 of the first packet that you had. What do you mean by charter school transition, and there's a decrease 14.5%? Could you say more?
Depending, in general, depending on the number of students that go from us to a charter school, there's a little give back to the district for a transition aid for
And
those
that's
kids going.
what was given
That's
back
what
to
that
us?
represents.
Why is it like negative in red?
That means it's 49, almost 50,000 lower currently
Oh,
than
that's right,
what it
that's
was
variance,
last
yes,
year.
okay.
Not number of kids, this is dollars.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 6.01. Can I have somebody move to the table a contractor award for Reimagine Greece Phase 6? Moved by Mr. Stetzel, second by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all is in favor? That passes 9-0. 7.01 is anticipated bids. It's written information only. Does anybody have any questions on that? Seeing none, moving along to the consent agenda. Can I have somebody move the consent agenda to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, second by Vice President Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to 9.01, the robotics trip. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Farmer, seconded by Mr. Stutzel. Any comments, questions, concerns on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to student board member comments. Mr. Alvarez.
Hello. Yeah, so my comments today are basically around Superintendent's Advisory Council. They met in January where they discussed and reviewed many data that we found from our focus groups that was conducted or facilitated all the way back in December. And the discussion was basically about finding common themes from the data and then finding the opportunity, basically finding the themes of different examples, such as finding more opportunities to build relationships between students and teachers, or celebrating student achievement between clubs and activities. And then from those themes that were generated, the plan is to develop a presentation that myself and Sarah Hunter, the TSAC chair member, will share at the superintendent's, will share with the superintendent's cabinet. And then, as Mr. Eric Mock mentioned earlier today from GTA, I, along with 6 other Greece panel members, attended the NICET Disconnected conference, and it was not only an amazing opportunity to share about our district's implementation of the Yonder Pouch, but as well as learning about how much our phones and technology kind of impacts our environments and impacts our educational outcomes. And then today, or throughout the week, I had a conversation with with Ms. Lori Quinn, who is the teacher on special assignment for Leader in Me, and we spoke about how almost half the elementary schools and Athena Middle School have a Greece Student Lighthouse team, where basically the school is implementing ways for students to participate in various service learning projects, or collecting donations from collecting donations for lollipop farms, or even writing cards to different nursing homes. And then the highlight of it all is that it's all student-led. So students also have the ability to facilitate and run announcements and help coordinate Leadership Day, where students are able to highlight other students who exemplify the 7 daily habits in their school buildings. And then I also learned that all elementary schools are implementing or setting WIG goals, which is widely important goals, and those are all academically driven. So I thought that was a nice thing to see. And then, as well as a lot of the schools are also implementing leadership notebooks or portfolios, where they basically have all their leadership goals all organized into one binder in a sense. And it's practicing the ability of staying organized, but as well as taking the ownership of their own learning. And then the final thing that I also learned from Ms. Quinn was that, kind of like how Mr. Jones mentioned today for the GASA presentation, that there was many leadership courses taking place in our districts, such as Phoenix, Athena High School, and Arcadia High School, where they're all applying the 7 daily habits to their teenage life, but as well as being highlighted by different teachers, such as a Phoenix teacher who teaches a course and said that all the components of a profile of a graduate is also being emphasized in the leadership course as well. So that's my comments for today.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Any other board member comments? Mr. Stutzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging first that February is Black History Month. It's a time to reflect on important parts of our history. And one significant chapter I'd like to highlight, especially as somebody who works both in healthcare and education/academia, is the Tuskegee syphilis study. Thank you, Tracy, for that idea. This is a deeply unethical 40-year clinical study that was conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service from 1932 to 1972. The study involved 600 black men, 399 who had syphilis, and 201 who did not. These men were misled and denied proper treatment for their disease, even after penicillin became the standard cure for this in 1940. Instead, they were told that they were being treated for, quote-unquote, bad blood, and were never informed of the true nature of this study. The purpose was to observe the natural progression of syphilis without providing any effective treatment. When the study was exposed by journalists in 1972, it sparked outrage in the community and led to significant changes related to research ethics, including the creation of the Belmont Report. This report established essential principles for conducting ethical research on human subjects, which are still in practice today. And I think that the 3 principles that I'm going to talk about here for a moment are relevant to what we're doing here, which is respect for persons, which is emphasizing autonomy and the need to protect individuals. The second is beneficence, which means minimizing harm and maximizing benefits. The third is justice, not social justice, but justice, ensuring that all participants receive fair treatment based on need, effort, and merit. This event also led to the establishment of the Institutional Review Boards, or IRBs, which are now required for all research involving human subjects. Thanks to this, we have systems of informed consent, checks for comprehension and literacy, and voluntary participation and clear understanding of the risks and benefits. This chapter in our Black history in the United States is something that we're all impacted by today. Shifting gears, because I'm talking about health here and education, I also want to recognize that February is Heart Health Month in the United States. Did you know that your heart is the only muscle on your body that never gets to rest? It beats an average of 100,000 times a day without pause. Despite its incredible resilience, the heart disease remains as the leading cause of death for men and women, as well as for many racial and ethnic groups. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, that remind us that heart disease does not discriminate. It's ubiquitous. In fact, according to the American Heart Association, 23,000 children experience cardiac arrest outside of the hospital each year. That's why it's important that we raise awareness of this public health issue through education, and everyone who has the capacity gets trained with CPR, all right, basic CPR. For you never know when you might be able to save a life. Also, my last plug with this is that National Wear Red Day is coming up this Friday, the 7th. All right? So I encourage everyone to wear red in your support of heart health and help spread awareness about this vital issue that could impact all of us. And lastly, I'd like to just express my heartfelt gratitude to the wonderful staff, and you know who you are, watching, at Greece Olympia for your tremendous kindness and support to my daughter during a related health issue over the past week. Whether through your personal messages or sending cards or your thoughtfulness has truly meant the world to me and to her. I know it. And I want you to know I deeply appreciate everything that you all do and the compassion that you bring to people like her and the other students you serve every day. Your care makes a difference, not just in my daughter's life, but in the lives of the students you serve, and I can see that. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bonagario.
Thank you. Last week, the National Assessment of Educational Progress released its annual report card on student achievement. It was another disappointing report card nationally, and fair to say that it was also disappointing here in Greece, where we saw performance for our students slip several points in ELA performance proficiency and in math proficiency. It's really important for us to keep our eyes forward, looking at, we have to acknowledge we've been nationally and locally on a long trajectory of flat and actually declining achievement levels, and that's really disappointing, and it really begs us as board members to pay close attention and really start to dig into what is behind that and what we can do to make an improvement. And I know our staff is working on it hard, and I appreciate that, and I want to, again, call attention to what we've been doing with our core. Yes, our reading performance dropped. We're in the first full year of our core. Looking nationally, where we have states, Mississippi and Louisiana, stand out as I think the two states that bucked the trend in improved performance. And they have had a multi-year dedication to the science of reading and evidence-based strategies, pedagogy. So we're on the right track, but it's going to take some time. And it still, as I said, requires us as board members to be vigilant and diligent in ensuring that we see fruits from that, all of that work. Natalie Wexler is a education journalist, and some of our staff did a book study on one of her recent books, The Knowledge Gap. I just want to quote from her for a moment here, if I can find the right one. She noted the results, and she said, reading scores dropped to a historic low for 8th graders nationally, this is, with 33% scoring below the lowest level of basic. 40% of 4th graders also fell into that category, the highest proportion in 20 years. To make matters worse, she says, the decline was driven by the lowest achieving students. In other words, the scores of high performers stayed pretty much the same, but scores for low performers plummeted. Certainly, in a quote from the chairman of the National Assessment for Education Progress, said, certainly the most striking thing in the results is the increase in inequality. And just looking back at our own numbers, and this I think is a really important thing for us to understand. Among economically disadvantaged students, in ELA, the numbers were down, proficiency was down 5 percentage points, and in math, down 4 percentage points. A little bit better among non-economically disadvantaged students. We've talked about equity quite a bit. There's actually some mixed results when you dig into some of the other subgroups, but I think this just calls us back to the importance of really focusing on this. And we have to keep in mind, 90% of our nation's students are educated in public schools. There is no one else that can pick up that load. This is our job. No one else is even capable of handling that. So we really have to make it work. If we can do our part here, I'm calling on us as a board to be extra vigilant, extra diligent, and really focus on driving positive change. Thank you.
Ms. Lake.
When I ran for the school board, and when I used to speak at Residents Forum, I did it because I felt advocacy was very important. And I joined at our president's suggestion, I joined the Legislative Committee for Monroe County Schools. So every first Wednesday, we go to lunch and talk about priorities. We just had a legislative breakfast meeting with our legislators, but the only thing we're about is getting money. The 10 position papers are all about funding. And I just think that there are so many things we should be doing in Monroe County in terms of instruction. And we had some of our senators from the United States Senate, and they could be showcasing some of these states that are having amazing results. And Mark referred to Louisiana and Mississippi. Mississippi was 49th for forever. They now are the 7th highest in 4th grade reading scores overall, but they're number 1 for low-income students, number 3 for Black students, and tied for number 1 with Hispanic students. And when you hear something like that, that's so overwhelming that they could make that progress. And there's no reason we can't with the bright people that are working here. And I'm so disappointed that our board doesn't have more time together to really talk about these issues. I know that several people at retreats have said that our role is the board, and I know that this is what Monroe County School Boards Association says, is to set policy and then to shut up. But the handbook that's the authority, which was co-sponsored by the New York Bar Association and the New York School Boards Association, says that the governance is in all areas of the district, including academic and behavioral, and it just gives a list. So I believe that, you know, we do have a responsibility. And I see 2 more schools have been added to those cited by the state, meaning that there are 5. And in a short time, it'll seem like a short time, our board will have to approve these plans with the district plan. We get the plan about 4 o'clock on a Friday, and Tuesday, we're asked to approve it. The time I spent on those plans, it was overwhelming, and I think we need more time, and it would be nice if we had time when we could discuss the plans. And the last thing I wanted to say, I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about goals for an organization. And my friend said that they should be SMART goals. And I thought he was saying I was stupid, which he might have been thinking too, but that wasn't what he was talking about. And I asked for an explanation, and I thought this was really good. They need to be specific, clear and unambiguous. It answers who, what, where, when, and why. They need to be measurable. There should be concrete criteria to track progress and determine when the goal's been reached. They should be achievable. The goals should be realistic and attainable, considering your resources and capabilities. Relevant. It should matter to you and align with the broader objectives and values. And time-bound. The goals should have a defined deadline or time frame for completion. And one of the things we've learned about these turnarounds that states have done, school districts have done, is they are heavily based on numbers. They're doing assessments all the time, even to the tune that teachers are assessing every lesson they do. Not in terms of what their intention was, but how that translated to the students. And they have ways of measuring that. And I just was amazed that I wish I had known those things when I was teaching, because they could have made, I think, my classes much more engaged. So I hope that we can continue to work on instruction and some of the things we've learned and work together.
Ms. Vera?
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment out here. Last month, I had the opportunity with the Greece Chamber of Commerce do a networking event at JA at Biztown at Kodak Park. It was a networking event, so we didn't get to see this in action. So I asked to see this in action when Greece was going to go. Greece is actually going to be doing JA Biztown, I believe, in the spring. So I look forward to seeing that. But what I did get the opportunity to see was the Spencerport class, 5th graders. They were in there, and it's a very amazing opportunity if you ever get a chance to see this. The students were actually engaged in the curriculum that they were learning. Although it was a field trip kind of a moment, they were teaching things about hospital, jobs at the hospital, whether it could be health-related, construction-related, all sorts of different aspects. Airline, RG&E, banking, food industry. They were working on a supply and demand, going around to each and every little business that these kids were working on to sell their product. So they also had to pay their bills. They also learned how to vote, and they also voted in for a mayor of the city. So it was nice to see the working relationship they had going, to see what these kids are going to be doing in the future, because this is important stuff that they needed to know regarding the supply and demand and how to pay the bills. It was a great thing to see. I appreciate the opportunity. Also, I had an opportunity to visit NASA's Challenger at Kodak Park with the 5th grade Longbridge School. That was a very interesting simulation for the NASA Challenger, to see Mars in action, to see how we're going to redo the living on Mars and building the soil and the rocks that they were doing, to see about the magnetism of this. It was very interesting. I appreciated the moments to go there. We did have the Monroe County School Board luncheon. I did get to sit with Assemblyman Josh Jensen. We did talk about the electric bus issue that we're seeing that was not noted in the governor's budget. At that time, I had an opportunity to sit with Senator Schumer. He had a representative in his honor as we talked about safety issues within the school, which was a very interesting point coming from him. I appreciate going with the veterans tax exemption. I am glad to see that the board approved that 9-0. It was very nice to see. And to pass off my last note here was Footloose. On Friday, I actually got to see Footloose with a couple of the other board members. What an amazing show. We were actually talking about this in exec session afterwards, about how it was, I just can't even get the words out. The lighting, the choreography, the students that were involved. We were trying to figure out if you could pair other students in other positions. There was a preacher, the farmer. You couldn't really do it. It brought you onto the story. You laughed, you cried. It took you through the moment. So it was wonderful to see that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I got to
The
clarify
sets?
two things. Just two things on Ms. Ferris' comments. Number one, we weren't talking about the play in exec session. It was after exec session. And number two, we didn't approve the veterans tax exemption tonight. We're going to hold a public hearing. I just want to make sure that's clear. I misinterpreted your comments because it sounded like we approved it, and that's
Yes,
not what
thank
we
you for the
did.
clarification.
So I want to make sure we clarified that. Ms. Millar?
I also saw Footloose. It's amazing. One more weekend. Please go and see it. Because you know I'm a music person, Jazz 90.1 University is starting this month, and it's a community learning events throughout, and they pick a jazz artist, and they have a discussion about it. You can find out more about it on www.jazz90.1.org. But the highlight of my month, since I've talked to you, was Winter Wonderland Night, where this room was filled. I could hear the giggles out in the hallway, and this entire room was filled with children doing math problems and laughing. It was fabulous. I also got to be with Anna and Elsa, so that was a little tribute for me, fun. But anyway, so nice to see families out. Please consider doing more events like that. It was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Millar. Mr. Butler?
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to say special thanks to the superintendent's cabinet for including me in the district comprehensive improvement team. It's been really, I've been so impressed with the thoughtfulness and the rigor that group brings to, and the introspection that group brings to looking at the challenges that we face as a district and finding ways to get better all the time. So that's, there's a huge amount of effort that goes into that, a huge amount of reflection and a huge amount of expertise in that room, people that really know what they're talking about, and I learn a ton from those folks every time that I'm there. So I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to be involved in that and be part of improvement here in the district. So that's it.
Mr. Maloney? Thank you, Mr. Butler.
First of all, I'd like to thank Romeo and his staff for keeping us updated on the budget. I know it's a lot of hard work. I know it isn't an easy thing to do, and trying to second-guess the governor is always a hardship. And you've done well over the years. And I also like to thank Dave Richardson for his transportation update. It was enlightening, even though that we'll get things worked out. I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Vice President Farmer?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to touch on a few different things here, and it might overlap. But we were down at Shalott Beach on Sunday. My nephew participated in the polar bear plunge, and it was a source of pride to see Greece buses there helping this whole beautiful day happen in terms of fundraising. And anyway, it was good to see Greece there. I also want to reiterate that transportation applications are due on April 1st. I'm sorry. So make sure you get those in so you can just have a seamless way of getting your transportation. And I also want to focus on Black History Month. And I want to talk a little bit about what we are seeing regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that is beginning to unravel decades, centuries worth of this great country striving to become even better. And I'm just going to read off some things. I want to start with the feeling of disheartenment regarding the helicopter and the plane crash that happened, the tragic incident that happened, and it was blamed on DEI hires. That concerns me when we're looking at reading scores and future endeavors and what that means for different people who may not fit the mold for what DEI would like to become. 1857, the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision. The Supreme Court rules that enslaved people are not citizens and cannot sue in federal court, effectively upholding slavery in territories. 1865, ratification of the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery throughout the United States. 1868, ratification of the 14th Amendment grants citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves, and prohibits states from depriving citizens of equal protection under the law, such as if an enslaved person would via the Underground Railroad end up in a state where it wasn't a slave state, but were forced to go back. So now all states. In 1874, the Henry Bergh, he was the founder of the American Society of Prevention to Animals. Through that society, we were able to remove a child from an abusive foster care setting based on prevention to cruelty of animals. This is when we began to see the beginning of American Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children. 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, upholds separate but equal racial segregation laws. Schools, separate, supposed to be equal. We know that wasn't the case. Bathrooms, water fountains, public transportation, we know that history. We know the separate but equal, and we know that it was not equal. Jim Crow, the Jim Crow era was a period in American history when state and local laws enforced racial segregation. The term Jim Crow was a derogatory term for African Americans. Thus, Jim Crow lasted from 1865 through 1877 until the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Jim Crow laws denied African Americans the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, and other opportunities. They were supported by everyday objects and images. People who defied Jim Crow laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 formally abolished Jim Crow laws. I went a little out of sequence there. I'm trying to do a timeline. But August 18th, 1919, the 19th Amendment, the right for women to vote, was ratified in Congress, making this a nationwide law. Victory took decades of agitation and protests that put many women in prison and force-fed when they refused to eat. Alice Paul, a not-so-known leader in the women's suffrage movement, is shown in the movie Iron-Jawed Angels. I urge you to take some time and watch that movie. 1924, the Snyder Act. Native Americans were given citizenship and voting rights. Does anyone else see the irony in that? 1948, the integration of the military under Harry S. Truman. 1954, Brown v. Board of Education declares racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. The Little Rock Nine, Ruby Bridges, who had to be escorted by the National Guard into the schools that were desegregating. They were spat on and cursed. This then caused, 1964, Civil Rights Act abolished Jim Crow. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 sought to overcome barriers for some to access the vote, mainly in the South. 1967, Supreme Court ruled unanimously that anti-miscegenation laws were unconstitutional and interracial marriage was no longer illegal. 1998, Matthew Shepard was tortured because he was gay and was left to die on October 6th. In 2009, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr., the Hate Crimes Prevention Act was passed. 2022, the Marriage Equality Act. I have recently been reviewing, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this online learning resource. It's called the Khan Academy, to review my American history and my understanding of the Constitution and the amendments. I failed to mention Carter G. Woodson, who was the founder of a week of the first Black History Week. I'm going to read this. He wrote a book called, he wrote several books, but I want to just close with this quote. Carter G. Woodson, if you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a person feel that he, she is inferior, you do not have to compel him, her, to accept an inferior status. He, she will seek for it. If you make a person think he, she is a justly outcast, you do not have to order that person to the back door. That person will go without being told, and if there is no back door, the very nature of that person will demand one. All Americans have benefited from the passage of civil rights over the years. Instead of remaining victims or perceiving themselves as victims, we instead use the rights. Our democracy and Constitution provides to make all people, women and all marginalized people, equal and free in this country that we love. Thank you.
I got everybody, right? I'm going to be brief. I just want to thank Mr. Rosario for his heroic actions. His actions truly potentially saved two of our young children's lives. I want to encourage everybody to come speak at the public hearing, whether you're for or against the veterans tax exemption. The board, to make a smart decision, is going to need to hear from people on both sides of the issue. So I encourage everybody to get signed up. There'll be a sign-up sheet, like I said earlier, till 6:30 that night. And to my colleagues on the Board of Education, I think we need to take a moment and step back and think about truly what board member comments should be. And I'm not singling any individual out, but it typically has been what our students are doing, what we're doing in our schools, and it's now turned into some type of political speak by some members. That's not what board member comments are for. We're 40 minutes into board member comments at this point, and there were very few comments regarding our schools and our students and what's going on in our buildings. It was multiple diatribes by multiple members. So I'd like everybody to maybe take a step back and consider, and maybe we look at doing something to clean up board member comments a little bit, because if we're going to keep doing this, we're going to end up with 2-hour meetings, because everybody's going to go on a 15 or 20-minute diatribe about whatever they want to talk about that's not relevant to the Greece Central School District. So with that, I'm done. Superintendent Smalling, you're up.
I just wanted to quickly recognize Black History Month as well in our schools. This is an opportunity for our students just to deepen their understanding of the countless contributions, achievements, and resilience of Black Americans throughout our nation's history. It's a time for us to engage in meaningful conversations and highlight the voices and stories that have shaped our society. I am personally very excited about our upcoming celebration of Black Excellence. That's on February 13th at the GPAC, I believe 6:30 start, where we will highlight remarkable achievements of our students, educators, and community members. This event serves as a powerful reminder of the talent, resilience, and leadership within our schools and beyond. As we celebrate this month, I also want to reaffirm our commitment to equity and excellence for all students, ensuring that the lessons of history inform the progress we continue to make together. So let us use this time to learn, to uplift, and continue working together for a future where every student has the opportunity to thrive. Also want to mention that this is National School Counselor Recognition Week. I wanted to take a moment to recognize and celebrate the incredible work of our school counselors. As many of you know, our counselors play a vital role in supporting our students' academic, social, emotional, and personal growth. They are mentors, they are advocates, they are problem solvers, and a source of unwavering encouragement for our students, families, and staff. Their impact extends far beyond schedules and college applications. They shape lives. So I wanted to personally thank them for their compassion, commitment, and their countless ways they uplift our students in our schools. And I just want to put in another plug. Many of you that are either listening tonight or were here tonight, students, staff, family, community members, my entry survey is out. I know as of Monday, I think I had 700 responses. So just want to keep on requesting people take that seriously, get that out to people, and provide us your feedback. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Smalley. Mr. Maloney.
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Praise Jesus. Do I got a second? Board Member Millar, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Thank you, everyone.